Hi, my name is Aaron Green. I am a classical and flamenco guitar maker. I have in my hands here an incredibly special instrument. This is Sabicas' 1951 Marcelo Barbero, with which he used to record the album Flamenco Puro. This is, I would say, arguably the most significant and famous flamenco guitar in existence. It is not only having the provenance of having been owned by Sabicas and used for his landmark album, it is an absolutely stellar instrument. It is the best Barbero I've ever seen, and I would say probably one of the best guitars I've ever seen. I feel very fortunate to have been able to get to know it. The history of this instrument is very interesting. It was actually built for Carlos Montoya and has an inscription to him on the inside of the top, the underside. Sabicas acquired it from Montoya. He used it for the album Flamenco Puro and then gave the guitar to his friend Fidel Zabal. Zabal was the teacher of this guitar's next owner, a gentleman by the name of Robert Schultz, who was a very dear friend and client of mine. Bob was a young student, he was a medical student, and he was studying flamenco guitar with Zabal, and was actually given the opportunity to tour with the Jose Greco company as the third guitarist. Zabal, actually that was his gig and he couldn't do it, so he passed it along to his student. The other guitarist in the troupe heard him play and said, okay, he's good enough, and they had one condition, which was he needed a better instrument. Zabal offered to sell Bob either of his guitars. He had a Santos Hernandez and he had this Barbero. Bob chose the Santos because Santos was a much more famous builder in those days. Zabal said okay, and Bob came back for his lesson next week. And in that time, Zabal had changed his mind and said, I'm not going to sell you the Santos, I will sell you the Barbero. So he bought it, took it home on the bus in a paper bag. So the history of this guitar is somewhat known up until Bob enters into the picture. So at this point I would like to continue its history and talk a little bit about Bob. He was an unbelievably accomplished man and one of my favorite people I've ever met. I feel so fortunate to have had him as a friend. He was a great inspiration to me. He was a famous orthopedic surgeon. He had invented various techniques and I believe in implements to aid in surgery. He was a highly regarded teacher. He published textbooks. He was, an incredibly intelligent man. I think what I loved most about him, though, had nothing to do with that. What I loved about him was that he was never without a giant grin on his face. He was almost had like this childlike enthusiasm for everything he did. It was infectious, and he was just a joy to be around. He and his wife Marcy were always come down to the city. He was a student of Dennis Koster's, and he would study with Dennis. This is how I got to know Bob. And she would be there as well, and we would often go out and have dinner. And it was just, it was basically, for me, it was just an incredible thing to meet a person like that, who not only was so accomplished and successful, but was just so humble and joyous and nice. I mean, he's just, like I said, a real inspiration. And his wife Marcy is likewise someone I adore. For me as a builder, I've always believed that access to great instruments was paramount to my own education and furthering my skills as a builder, to be able to take an ideal and basically create an instrument out of that. I was so fortunate to be able to have access to this guitar. As a young builder, when I was starting out, I went to see Bob not long after I started coming to New York City. And I had been building flamenco guitars at that point, and I had studied a fair amount of really, really good flamenco guitars. But I knew that, this instrument was in Bob's hands, and I wanted to study it. So I went with Dennis to his home, and I will never forget this experience because it was absolutely astounding. Dennis took the guitar out, and he started playing it, and my jaw was on the floor. I had never heard anything like that, and it was, for me, it wasn't the most comfortable experience because I had a guitar that I was quite proud of, and all of a sudden it wasn't one I was quite so proud of anymore. The thing about its sound that really knocked me out was its incredible vibrancy, its immediacy, its volume and horsepower, and the fact that it had this unlimited tonal palette. Dennis went straight from a bulerías into the Bach chaconne, and the guitar went from this snarling dragon into this singing angel like that, and it was utterly inspiring and somewhat depressing because I had no idea how to do that. But I was going to find out, and I have made a very, very close study of this instrument. Since I've had it in my possession for a few years, I've learned even more about it, and it's been, for me, something that I'll be eternally grateful for. So this particular instrument is very well known to guitar makers, as many builders are using plans that were drawn up by Richard Brunet. He did an amazing job when he repaired this instrument in the early 90s, and he took that opportunity to draw very detailed plans for which the guitar making community is very indebted to him for. However, having the instrument in your hands is the next step, I guess, in understanding why it is such a successful instrument. In short, I can say that it has what I would call the ability to work very well with itself. This is a sort of, it encapsulates everything when I say that. Every part of this guitar works perfectly. It is an incredibly vibrant instrument. It is in remarkable condition. There is almost no distortion to its face. The neck has an action that is almost not to be believed. It's set up like a Stratocaster, and it is very fast. It plays like a dream, and it is just an inspired instrument. I very rarely come across guitars quite like this one. So now I'm going to pass this guitar along to my friend Dennis Koster, who was Dr. Schultz's teacher. Dennis was a student of Sabicas's, and he is going to play some of Sabicas's music on this guitar now.